We're back in the Navigate Credit Union Broadcast Center, continuing the talk about education here in Providence. We're here now with Bob DeRobbio. He is running for mayor of Providence. Thanks so much for joining us today.
Good afternoon. Thank you.
So today was a big day for you. You had a big press release talking about the deficiencies in English language programs here in Providence.
It was talking about a complaint that was filed with the Department of Justice in 2016 that cited a number of irregularities within the department. Yes, so it's really a day where decisions have to be made within the school department and within the city as to what they're going to do and how to deal with these deficiencies for English language learners.
And so talk to us a little bit about the complaint. What were some of the things people cited as not being done?
The parents in the complaint had cited that, number one, they were deprived of services because their children were taken out of certain services that the parents had actually signed paperwork to waive those services for their children. There was a deficiency in the fact that the number of teachers were not adequately certified to deal with the students. There were deficiencies in that administrators were not trained to properly handle them. And initially that there were deficiencies in that parents had to make a decision if their child was in special education and also an English language learner as to what services they wanted because of the place or the building that they were situated in.
And so what kind of an impact does this have on the children of Providence?
When the decision goes back to looking at those children that had come through the system from 2012, 2013, to see what services they were deprived of, why they were deprived of services, the waivers that the parents signed to take them out of services, and to provide them with those services from this point forward. Also to train a number of teachers in ESL so that they could work with the students more effectively.
So, and one of the other things that was brought up was the lack of communication with parents who may not speak English themselves in their native language. And what kind of an impact does that have?
There was an interim judgment in 2016 that said that paperwork had to be, or waivers had to be signed, or any letters had to be signed by parents, and it had to be presented to them in their native language so that they knew what they were signing and how it was going to affect their children within the programs within the school department.
And so what kind of an impact has this had, and how can we go about fixing it?
You know, I want to go back to the fact that everyone has seen, or at least between the superintendent claimed that he didn't know that it went before the Department of Justice. The mayor didn't know anything about it going before them. More importantly, the city council didn't know that there was even this problem within the system. And yet we have, paperwork or complaints that date back to April of 2016, an interim judgment that came out in August of 2016, another interim judgment that came out in August of 2017, and a final review of it that came out in March 8th of 2018. Money had been appropriated to deal with the problems. City Council didn't know where that money was going or why it was being appropriated, and yet everyone doesn't know about it. It's amazing. It's mind-boggling. And yet the students are the ones that are suffering for it, 8,000 students.
And so who do you think, when it comes down to it, who do you think is responsible?
I have to say that the blame is right at the top, with the mayor. There has to be some accountability as to who knew what, when, where those dollars went, why they were even appropriated for the school department if everyone knew that there wasn't a problem, and yet there was a problem. And state funds being used, federal funds being used to deal with this, it has to rest at the top.
And if you were to be elected mayor, what steps would you take to help prevent this from happening in the future, as well as to help backfill the problems that we're seeing?
The backfill is a real serious issue to me because of the number of students involved, the number of years that they may have been deprived of services, the fact that we are looking at test scores yearly and saying, why is there a decline? Why aren't our English language learners doing better than what we expected to do with all the services? And now to say that Well, this could be a cause of it because the funds weren't really going into the programs that they were supposed to go into. It's real hard for me to believe. It's like, how do you fix this problem? Do you say, I'm sorry, I didn't know it was happening? Well, try and tell 8,000 parents that you didn't know it was happening, and all of a sudden, you know, those students are have graduated and going out into the community and can't find jobs and stuff. It's a real disservice to them, and it's really an injustice to them. I, as mayor, will surround myself with enough people, knowledgeable people, that know how to solve the problem, that know how to correct the problem, that know how to work with teachers to get them certified to deal with these students, to train administrators to deal with the teachers in the room, and also to have as much communication as possible so that these acts of omission don't happen again.
And how does this impact the community as a whole? You mentioned these students are graduating. Some of them aren't at the proficiency that they need to be at. They haven't learned what they need to learn. How does this have a ripple effect on the rest of the city?
You know, we have the state and the city are talking about jobs and placing people in employable positions. And when you have students or high schools that are graduating, 58% of their people, 62% of their students, even 70% of the students. The highest one in Providence is classical with 97% of the students graduating. You're saying, where can these students go? You have a governor that's bringing in high-tech industry into the state and saying, I am creating jobs for the people within the state. And yet you have a school system that cannot fulfill the need for getting these students placed in those high-paying jobs and, you know, technology-rich jobs. It's really a disservice to the whole.
And how pervasive is this issue within the city of Providence specifically? How many students as a percentage are affected?
That represents about 30% of the student population, the 8,000 students, yes.
So it's a big issue.
30% of the students and belonging to a family, 60% of the families have a non-English speaking family. So it's a ripple effect, you know, down the road. It's an injustice. It has to be solved. These students are our most valuable product within the city of Providence. We have to do everything possible to find the dollars to solve this problem and to make sure it does not happen again.
And so pivoting a little bit, what are some of the other big issues that you're focusing on in your campaign?
Well, for the city of Providence, there are a number of issues. First of all, speed cameras are going to be introduced again beginning September 4th. This is not what the community wants. There are too many people that are having to make a choice between paying a fine or putting food on the table or making rent payments. This speed cameras has been one of the cornerstones of my campaign, that they will immediately be eliminated. The people will be refunded whatever fines that they have paid back, and that those infractions will be taken off their records.
What do you think, say, a better solution then? The issue is people speeding in school zones.
Well, there are people speeding now to avoid the speed cameras. They're taking shortcuts through neighborhoods just to get around that fact because they have been caught by them once and they don't want to pay the fines again. We can put in speed bumps. We can put in small traffic circles in the intersections. You know, we can employ people by actually putting in crossing guards that are out there directing traffic. I mean, that would be a two-way gift to say some people are employed and we're also solving the safety issue.
So you think the speed cameras, there's no benefit to them?
At present, I believe that there's no benefit to them. I think that too many people are suffering because of them. The statistics show 36,000 tickets in a span from December to June. People are getting ticketed between 7 o'clock at night, Saturdays and Sundays. Now, I know some of those regulations have been adjusted a bit, but people are still going to be driving around the block trying to avoid those cameras. And now we have more of them in place. We've almost tripled the amount that we have in place, up to 15 of them.
And so going back, what were some of the other issues that you were discussing that you think are most important?
You have the
for
sale of the
Providence?
Water Supply Board, which I believe many of the council candidates and also some of the city council people are against, saying that you don't trade a valuable asset to reduce the pension deficit. You have the Fane office tower that a lot of people are against, and that are saying that it's in the wrong place, that they don't want to come out and be against jobs, because we want jobs for the city of Providence, we want jobs for the state of Rhode Island, but to put a 600-foot structure in a vacant piece of land as a sole building just doesn't make sense to them, and you're going through and trying to do adjustments to various city ordinances and codes to make this building possible. You have the education piece, that's a major piece. You have safety in the streets, safety in the neighborhoods, that's a very important issue. There's a laundry list of things that we could go over.
And so we're here in downtown Providence. You're saying a lot of people are against the Fane Tower. They think it's a bad placement. Right over here in front of us, we have the Superman building.
Correct.
Sat empty for a while. What do you think is the future for the building?
Well, I said several weeks ago when I appeared on GoLocal that my campaign poster is the one that you have on your window there with the Superman building lit up, and I promised the taxpayers within the city of Providence that that building will be lit up at the end of the my initial 4-year term as mayor. That building cannot go to waste. It's an icon within the city. These same developers are looking to put up new buildings. Those same types of incentives can be put into that building and tried to make useful again. So that building, immediately efforts will be made to get tenants into that building and make it valuable.
And what if the debate that some say it's not even salvageable because the facade is so eroded and the limestone needs so much work to get it back to where it needs to be? Do you think that's a hurdle that can be overcome?
I think that once someone gets in there and looks at it and sees the type of structure it is, the beauty of that interior lobby, the upstairs, the walls, some walls may be taken in. I know that there are internal problems with the elevators and with airflow and stuff, but someone with enough ingenuity and with the right types of incentives can certainly make an old structure valuable again. Yes.
Hopefully that's the case, and we can see the lights in the Superman building someday soon.
You have an excellent view of it.
We do. It's right out here in front of us, right here in downtown Providence. Well, thanks so much for joining us today, shedding some light on some of the issues of education and some other big issues here in downtown Providence. So thanks so much for joining us today. And
thank you for having me. Great. Pleasure.
And that does it for us today here on GoLocal Live. Kate will be back tomorrow with your early kickoff to the weekend at noon. Till then, you can stay up to date on the latest in news, politics, and everything else in Rhode Island on GoLocalProv.com. Here in the Navigate Credit Union Broadcast Center, I'm your GoLocal Live host, Rachel Nunes.